Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of UCTV Alive for Kids. It's great to have your company again. I'm Dr. Louise Grimmer from the Tasmanian School of Business and Economics at the University of Tasmania. And today I'm really excited to welcome our special guest, and that person is Professor Gretta Pecl from the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Studies at the University of Tasmania. That's a mouthful, isn't it? Welcome to the show, Gretta.
Thank you very much for having me on.
Really
Louise.
excited to have you here with us today. Now, you're going to be, you're a climate and marine ecologist, and today you're going to present to us about squids and other suckers. That's my favourite title for one of our programs so far. Before we start, can you tell us a little bit about what you do at IMAS and how you got interested in science?
Okay, well, I was always one of those kids that liked walking along the beach and picking up different animals and looking at different critters and thinking, well, how does this lay its eggs and where does it eat and where's its butt, and all sorts of different questions about animals. And so I was always interested in the natural world, and we'd go down to the beach once a year with Mum and Dad, and Mum would always shriek if we ended up in the water past our knees, and I'd think, what is so scary that's in the water? And got quite interested. But then when I was a teenager growing up in Glenorchy, we didn't really know any scientists or even really any other people that had gone to uni other than the teacher and the doctor, and it didn't really occur to me that you could be a scientist. That dawned on me later on, and I worked for a couple of years and then went to uni at the University of Tasmania and did a science degree, and it all blossomed from there.
And hence your interest in things in the water,
yes,
which we're going to hear about today. Well, before Gretta gets underway with her PowerPoint presentation, just a reminder that we'll have the 5-minute break at the end of the presentation, and that's time for you to get your questions into the chat function. So think about your questions as Gretta is giving her presentation. And if you can put your name and which school you're from, that would be wonderful, so I can read that out when I read your question as well. Shall we get underway, Gretta?
All right, let's do it.
Take it away.
Okay. So, squids and other suckers. We'll start off, though, with an acknowledgement to country. So we're on Nipaluna land that is still occupied by the Muanina people, and they have cared for sea country for many, many thousands of years, and have got a really extraordinary knowledge of our marine environment. So I always like to pay respects to the Muanina people because they know an awful lot about the kinds of things that I'll be talking to you about today as well. So we'll be talking about squids and their relatives. So that's called cephalopods. So cephalopods are octopus, cuttlefish and squid, and there's over 650 different species of squid, octopus and cuttlefish. That's a lot, isn't it?
That is a huge number, and I did not know that.
Yeah, a huge number of them.
That's amazing.
They are found only in marine systems, so only in salty water systems, but they're found everywhere throughout the oceans. And they come from the mollusk group of animals, so soft-bodied animals, so snails and barnacles and clams and worms and those kinds of animals. And cephalopod literally means head foot. So if you think of a snail's got that really muscular foot on it. In a cephalopod, that muscular foot is what's turned into the arms. So cephalopod comes from the Greek word head, feet. So octopus are the ones that are more blobby, and they crawl around on the ocean floor. They can swim as well, but most of the time they're crawling along the ocean floor. Squid are usually the group of cephalopods that are really good swimmers. So these are the fast, elite athlete versions of the cephalopod, really fast swimmers. And cuttlefish are more designed for hovering and for really delicate, fine kind of movements in and out of rocks and caves and nooks and crannies in the ocean. So they all kind of have a slightly different sort of habitat that they specialise in.
Gretta, some people say that octopus or octopi, whatever the terminology for a group of octopuses are very clever. Is that true?
They are all very clever, and I will get to that in a slide.
Okay.
Yes, no, they're sometimes called the pinnacle of invertebrate evolution because they're such smart critters. So if we look at the anatomy of cephalopods, they've got that sac-like body, that's called the mantle. They've got their head, and they've got arms that come off and then two big long feeding tentacles. So squid have got feeding tentacles as well, and octopus have only got arms. Now the difference between arms and tentacles is that arms have got suckers all the way along them, and tentacles are just muscular tubes, and then they've got suckers right on the very end of them. But you can see that they've got their head with the arms coming off the head. So it's like if I had a ring of arms coming off the top of my head, the head and then the squid body, and they've got a funnel just under their neck that they can shoot water out at high speed, which is how they jet around. So they'll suck in water, seal their mantle cavity, and then shoot the water out of their funnel, and then that's how they can swim backwards really, really fast.
And does the fins sort of help direct them?
The fins, they can also swim with fins, but you're right, they use that as a directional kind of rudder, like on a canoe where you've got a rudder for your direction.
And two eyes?
Two eyes, yep. But there are lots of really weird things about cephalopods. So they have 3 hearts. Wow. They've got a big main heart like we do, but then they've got a heart at the base of each of their gills as well that pumps blood around. They can breathe through their skin as well as their gills, so they can extract a bit of oxygen out of the environment via their skin. They can use a smoke screen to get out of danger. So all cephalopods have got an ink sac in their body.
Yep.
And they can use that in different ways. One is they can just squirt it all over an animal that's trying to capture them, for example, and clog up the animal's gills or breathing with this murky jelly kind of ink. Or they can use it as a smoke screen. So the animal might be a dark colour, and then it'll make its body go completely white and then shoot out a black blob of ink and then move off really quickly in the other direction. And the fish, or whoever's trying to eat it, gets fixated on a black creature, and then all of a sudden there's a black blob of ink. So it gets distracted.
Like a chameleon almost,
yes.
If it changes its colour that way.
I've got some slides on that too.
And Greta, is the ink different colours between those 3 main cephalopods that you showed us? Or are they...
No, they all have a black ink.
It's black.
It is black ink, but the skin of a cephalopod can be different colours, and I'll show you why in a minute. So we've just talked about how they move by jet propulsion. They've got a beak like a parrot, and I've got a picture of one of those coming up. And they can regenerate their arms or tentacles. So if one accidentally gets nipped off by a fish,
handy.
Yep, they just grow another one. They're pretty cool.
Wow.
Yeah. So this shows a section through the body of a cephalopod, kind of, if you think of it, cut through the middle like that. And why I wanted to show you this was you can see the head of the animal with the arms coming off and its big eyes, and then you can see something that is its stomach. And if you think about it, the squid's food, when it eats it, passes through its brain before it gets to its stomach. So remember I showed you before, if it's got like its ring of arms coming off the top of its head, its mouth is here. Oh. And so the food literally has to go through the brain to get to the stomach.
That must be why they're so clever.
Depending on what you eat. It's very weird. And that's why they've got this beak like a parrot, so they can smush the food up really small, because it's literally got to go through their brain. And so their brains are shaped like a donut because the food's literally got to go through it in a tube.
That's amazing.
It's weird, isn't it?
Very.
Yeah. But you mentioned that they were smart, and they are really smart. So octopus can use tools, they can recognise individual people. They are the Houdinis of the marine environment. And they play with toys. So we've had octopus in tanks when we've been studying different aspects of them, and they will escape. You've got to distract them when you're trying to remove bits out of their tank of like food that they haven't eaten. We've got to distract them on one side with like a net or something so that we can sneak in and take the food bits out, because they just like to come and play and have lots of fun.
They can squeeze. Octopuses can squeeze through tiny areas, can't they? I've seen some videos.
The limit on the size of the space they can squeeze through is the size of their beak,
Right, because that's
Yeah.
the hard bit that can't
Yes,
really
that's
squish.
the only hard bit in their body. So in an octopus, say if you had an octopus about this kind of, like basketball size,
Yeah.
the beak would probably be about that big.
So they could really
About
get
that kind of
through
size.
a hole.
Yeah, they could get through
size.
something that was probably a little bit bigger than maybe a 50-cent piece.
That's
Yeah.
incredible.
I tell you, there's kooky, there's more coming. All right. So lots of marine animals hatch out looking like something entirely different to what they end up as an adult. So they metamorphose at some point. Cephalopods hatch out as little functional adults, like their body plan is completely developed. And what you've seen in this video here is a little cuttlefish using its butt. It's got a special enzyme on its butt, and it keeps hitting the back of the egg sac with that enzyme that dissolves the egg sac, and then eventually it backs out. So that's how they get out of their
That's highly
eggs.
unusual, isn't it?
It is unusual, yeah. They've got really short lifespans. So most squid, for example, and most octopus live for only about 1 or 2 years.
That's not very long at all, really, is it?
No, and I bet you're wondering, Louise, how we know that.
I am wondering.
Yeah,
Please tell us.
I can tell you why that is. So squids have got ear bones called statoliths, and when we take out the statolith and polish it up and look at it under a microscope, there's one ring laid in that ear bone for each day that they're alive. So most of my PhD, when I went to university to become a marine biologist, most of my 3-year study project was looking down a microscope, counting these little rings.
That's dedication.
It is. And through that, we figured out this is from a southern calamari, a species we have around here in Tasmania. And this one was from a male, and it was 226 days old.
So, Greta, that's a little bit like, when you cut down a tree and you look at the
Exactly
rings
like
in a
that.
tree. It's
Yes.
very simple, but such a short lifespan.
Yeah, really short. They grow like nothing else, and that's because they eat ferociously. So we'll have a look at what else we've got here. So this is some suckers from its arm, and each one of those suckers has got independent nerve control, and they can actually smell through their suckers. So that's why you'll see videos of octopus creeping around and touching things with their arms. They're literally smelling the environment. Yeah. What else have we got? Ooh, the skin. So the skin of cephalopods. This is a close-up of squid skin, and each one of those cells is called a chromatophore. And chromatophores are full of different coloured dye, or melanin is the compound that's in there. And you can see there's those black chromatophores. They can shrink all those down so you only see tiny dots, and then you'll see all the red chromatophores. Or they might shrink all the red chromatophores and only show the black ones, so the animal will look black. Or they can shrink all the chromatophores and seem completely pale or white. So this is how cephalopods can change the colour of their skin.
So that's what they do when they're trying to hide from a predator.
Yes, and I've got a fantastic video to show you about that. But they use all these patterns all over their body to communicate with each other, to hide, and they can also change the texture of their skin. So they can make their skin look all lumpy and, like they're hiding in a seagrass or an algae or something like that. But let's have a look. This is my favourite cephalopod video in the world. So you'll see, and I'll show this in slow motion as well, so we can see blobby bit of seagrass, algae there, algae, not seagrass. Can you see a cephalopod? Oh, see? And it comes out.
Oh, my goodness.
and you wouldn't have known that was there, would you?
That would be quite a shock if you were filming that and all of a sudden.
This is why. So when we're out sort of diving and, walking around looking at different, in marine environments, you sometimes just won't see them, but they'll be there. Now this is it showing you in reverse, the camouflage.
Oh, yes.
So look, you'll see it changes its colour, and then it changes the texture on its skin, and then it's almost invisible.
Do you know, I thought it looked like it was shrinking, but it's not. It's actually just changing the way it looks. I thought it was sort of shrinking
into the
back.
environment. It's pretty cool, isn't it?
That is really cool.
All right. So bet you're wondering what is the biggest squid we have in Tasmanian waters.
I am.
What do you reckon?
I don't know. Please.
All right.
Please
Lots
tell
of
us.
people might say the giant squid.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah, but they might not be right. So, you would have heard of the giant squid, and you would have seen these, pictures from, different books and things. And we actually think that's a bit of fake news. We don't think that there's, giant squid out there that are attacking
Bringing down
boats
pirate ships.
No. We think there might have been a little bit of a made-up fantasy there. But you can see that giant squid there, and that's pretty giant, isn't it?
It is really giant.
We have something called the colossal squid.
Well, that's better than giant. I mean,
And I'm wondering,
colossal.
there's so much that we don't know about our deep ocean, and I'm wondering, what are they going to call the next one that they find?
Exactly. What's bigger than colossal?
I don't know. But that's pretty colossal,
Look
isn't
at the
it?
size of it.
And I mean, really, these are found in the Southern Ocean, so south of Tasmania, not really in Tasmanian waters, but they're certainly around in the ocean. Now, both the colossal squid and the giant squid are found in super deep waters, so they are not things that anybody's ever going to see. But people often have the discussion over who is the biggest, the giant squid or the colossal squid. Now, the giant squid might be a little bit longer if you pull out its tentacles and stretch them out, but the colossal squid is actually much heavier. And you can see that it's got a totally different body shape. It's a much bulkier kind of
the fin
squid.
Yeah, the fin especially is really different.
Yeah, the giant squid's the, tall, skinny sort of supermodel version, and the colossal squid's the beefy one. But they are the largest two invertebrates in the world. Yeah.
Wow. And they're down
They're
south
down
from
deep,
Tasmania.
very, 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 very deep.
Gee.
So if you look at, I like this picture because it kind of shows these two squids in comparison to one of, that big red bus that cruises around Battery Point in Salamanca. And you can see the body is kind of, probably about half as long. Then you've got the head, and then lots of really long, the really long tentacles that stick out as well. So they're quite big. Now, if we look at the colossal squid, that's called Mesoncoteuthis hamiltoni. I love that name.
Say that really quickly 5 times.
Its body is pretty brown. They live, 2,000 metres below the surface of the ocean. They're eaten by sperm whales. They're about 500 kilos, so about half a tonne in size. And their eyes are about the size of a school ruler across.
So they're about 30 centimetres across?
I was saying they were a metre.
Oh,
they're 30 centimetres.
About that? Wow,
Yes.
that's still a very big
That's
eye.
a huge eye, isn't it?
And
this
it's
is
the largest eye of any animal.
any animal in the world.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
Gee.
And obviously cephalopods have such big eyes because they're smart. They're absorbing a lot of information about the environment, and they have really big brains as well because they're doing a lot with the information that they get.
So they're looking and they're smelling and touching and sensing predators, I assume, and food, obviously, as well.
Yep,
Wow.
they are really smart. Wow. So this shows this is like a downward look at the mouth of a colossal squid. You can see the big arms coming around that, and then that white muscular bit in the middle is where the beak goes, and this is what the beak of a colossal squid looks like.
So that top picture hasn't got the beak on it?
The top picture of the beak's in that little muscular sac there, and then they could pull that white skin back and show the beak if they wanted.
Wow, look at the beak.
So the beak's a pretty sturdy looking thing. We'll look at giant squid now.
Yes.
So this is Archaeoteuthis ducks, another very cool scientific name.
Very.
Archaeoteuthis is Greek for chief squid. And female squid are around twice the size of males. That's very common actually in cephalopods, that the females are the larger ones. And in sharks too, which is why that shark song really annoys me. Baby shark, it's biologically inaccurate. Mummy shark is bigger than daddy shark.
Remember that, everyone.
Anyway, I digress.
Needs to be revised.
Yes, it does. But the giant squid, even though it's so huge, its eggs are only about 1 millimetre big. So they grow from this 1 millimetre thing into those giant squids in a couple of years.
I know you might be going to answer this in the future, but I'll just ask it while I remember. How many eggs would they lay?
Oh, they like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands.
Because they're
of
only
eggs.
1 millimetre, I guess you can.
Yeah. Animals tend to either have a small number of pretty big eggs and offspring, or large numbers of like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of eggs. The giant squid was only filmed live for the first time in 2006.
Wow.
And actually that was at a conference here in Hobart. That we hosted a cephalopod conference here in Hobart. And that film was shown for the first time to all the cephalopod researchers in the world.
How exciting.
In 2006. Yeah. So there's still so much to discover about creatures in the world and our oceans, and we know more about the moon than we do the deepest parts of the ocean, which means there's lots left to discover. Now, as I mentioned earlier, both the giant squid and the colossal squid live in really, 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 really deep waters. So they're never ever where people are. In fact, there's no reason to be frightened or worried about any kind of cephalopod at all, except the blue ring octopus.
Oh, yes. I remember when I was growing up as a child, always being told about the blue ring octopus.
Yeah, so go looking in rock pools and picking up things and having a look around. But if you see an octopus, you just put it back down. Because the thing about blue-ringed octopus is that it won't have the blue rings. It'll just look like a plain little octopus unless it's about to bite you, and then it shows you the.
Oh, so it gives you a nice little warning then.
Yeah, it literally is the warning. It literally is the warning. So the bite is completely painless. You won't feel it because it's a neurovenom. So it sort of gives you a little bit of pain relief and then bites you. But these blue ring octopus are hiding in crevices and shells and things like that. So. There's no need to kind of panic or worry. Like if you see one, you just go, whoops, and stick it back down, because they are no cephalopods are aggressive at all. They will just keep away from you if they see you. But I just thought I'd mention this one because, sometimes people don't know. They think it's a little white octopus or whatever. But if you see small octopus in inshore areas, you
keep away.
Don't pick them up. You can watch them, because they're not going to jump out and hurt you or anything. But it's a look and don't touch. So I just thought I'd mention that.
That's good. That's a good advice.
Yeah,
very good advice.
Yeah. Some other cephalopods that we have in Tasmania include the arrow squid, the southern calamari, which is what I've done most of my work on for about 2 decades now. There's a Maori octopus, and there's another one called a pale octopus. So these are the larger kinds of cephalopods and species that we see in and around the coastal areas around Tassie. And we've got a new one turning up as well called the gloomy octopus.
Oh, yeah. How did that octopus get such a sad name?
I think it looks pretty happy there, but when you see them, sometimes they've got these big white sort of circles around their eyes, and they can look a little bit down in the dumps.
Greta, who gets to name species? Who chose the name gloomy?
I don't know who called that one the gloomy octopus.
That's a pretty big job, isn't it, to come up with the name for a
taxonomists
species?
are the groups of scientists that study what constitutes a species and all the different characteristics of species. And I don't know a lot about the naming of new animals that are discovered.
Yes.
But it's there's a very sort of rigorous process on how you.
So it doesn't just get named after the person who discovered it.
No, and I mean gloomy octopus aren't new. They were living in New South Wales and Victoria, but they've turned up in Tasmania just in the last 10 years or so as our waters have gotten warmer.
Yes.
So you could ask me a question.
I will. I'm going to ask you a question about that. Can I do it now?
You can do it.
This is a question that some of you might have been thinking about, but I'm going to hop in and say, so Greta, as the world is getting warmer and our waters are getting warmer, what's happening with that in Tasmania where we live, and I guess more generally as well? What happens as the water is warming?
There was a new report out yesterday sort of showing how much temperature change we've had all over the planet. And most plants and animals have really defined temperature ranges that they're comfortable living in, just like, we do. We all have a temperature range that we like. And so what happens with plants and animals is that they live in their preferred temperature environment. And then as it warms up, it opens up new areas that might have been too cold before. And so for us here in the southern hemisphere, that means more available habitat down south. So a plant or an animal in the ocean that might have liked, say, 12 degrees in the water. As the water further south hits that 12-degree temperature, it'll sort of slowly start moving down the coast and surviving better. And
sort of migrating south.
Yeah, so we have plants and animals in the northern hemisphere are moving further and further north, and plants and animals in the southern hemisphere are moving further and further south. So there's this big redistribution of what plants and animals live where as our oceans warm, as our planet warms up. Yeah.
That's very important, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And that's something that I might even be able to come and talk to you about another time.
Yes, because that's your area. That's one of your areas of research.
So I started off working on squid and octopus, doing mainly field work, swimming and diving and fishing and all that kind of stuff, looking at how quickly they grow, how they spawn, where they lay eggs, all that kind of stuff. And then sort of moved into working on climate change, because I think that's pretty important that we understand that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So these are the species that we have here in Tasmania, the main sort of big ones that people might catch if they go out fishing. But these are two of my favourites as well, so I thought I would mention these as well.
Pretty.
One is Euprimna tasmanica, or the southern dumpling squid. This would be the cutest little squid.
It's really pretty.
I know,
colours
it's beautiful,
are gorgeous.
isn't it? This does something pretty kooky too, which I'll tell you in a minute. And the other one is the southern pygmy squid, or Idiocepes notoides. And that's also very funky. The Idiocepes is about the size of your small fingernail.
I was going to say, is it really small? Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's called a pygmy.
Yes. Yeah. So in Tasmanian waters, we kind of have some of the largest species, so giant squid, and some of the smallest species in the world, or Idiocepes. Now, I'm going to tell you one cool thing about each of these. There's lots of cool things, obviously, but we have to be selective for time.
We've got lots of questions coming in, I can see, which is great. Yeah.
So the dumpling squid is nocturnal. It only comes out at night. And in the day, it puts mucus all over itself and makes this like sandy coat so that you can't see it. It sort of hides, partially buries in the sand, puts this sandy mucus coat over the top so that no one can see it. They're very hard to find.
That's clever, isn't it?
But they'll come out at night.
Nighttime.
And then the pygmy squid, or Idiocepes, have an adhesive gland on their back. So they literally suck to different things. They attach themselves via their sticky back to kelp and seagrass and things like that. And it just means they can just literally hang there and not use any energy up while they're attached to the habitat.
Wow.
Yeah.
Do you know what I thought we might do? Because we've got so many questions coming in, we could actually start answering some questions instead of having the 5-minute break, and people can still post their questions because there's a lot coming in, Greta.
That's good. So
let's see. I want to see, because I was going to ask you about field work.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to show this slide to show the kinds of things that a marine biologist would do to discover more about plants and animals in the ocean. And so you can see one picture there. We've got our setup in the laboratory at IMAS, or the Institute for Marine and Antarctic Studies, and that's where we had octopus in there, and we were feeding them and trying to see how much they needed to eat, how quickly they grew, the timing of when they had babies, when they spawned, what kind, the growth rates of their babies, all that kind of stuff to try and better understand their biology. But we also do lots of field work, and that bottom picture there is some colleagues of mine counting squid eggs. So we would do lots of dive surveys. Normally the eggs would be in the ocean. Obviously we would leave them there, but every now and again we'd measure how many eggs are in different sized mops, and then we would put them back, and they survive just fine. So we would look at how quickly they grow. Southern calamari is the species that I've done most work on, and that we've probably done most work here in Tasmania. And they have this really complex behaviour. You'll see them on shallow inshore seagrass beds all along the coast in Tasmania. The males and females form temporary pairs, and they do this elaborate colour displays and dancing with each other before they mate. And the males have all different kinds of strategies that they do to impress the lady squid. Sometimes they form pairs. There's really big bull males, and there's little sneaker males as well that put on the colour displays of females so that they can get up close to the pairs of squid, the male-female pair, and they just mate quickly with the female while no one's looking, and the male doesn't bat an eyelid because he thinks it's another female, but it's not. And then they go away. So they do some really interesting behaviour, and I thought we could just finish up
let's have a look.
with a video of them spawning under the water. So this is a female, and she's laying one strand of eggs. Each one of those white finger-like things have got about sort of 5 to 7 eggs in it. And she lays one strand at a time.
Wow.
So the male gives her a sperm packet, and the female can store that for up to sort of 4 or 5 months and just use that to fertilise the eggs when she feels like it.
Well, that sounds like a very good way to run things.
Yeah. Or they can, this one actually has got the male guarding her above there, and so they probably have just mated, and she's fertilising the eggs as she's laying them. But if males are in short supply, they can just store that sperm and fertilise the eggs when they feel like it.
So as part of your field work, you obviously dive down and you spend a lot of time watching the squid.
Yes, we would, yeah. So we really try and understand how quickly animals are growing, where and when they're spawning, what kinds of habitats they need to spawn in, so that we can use a lot of complicated maths to put all that into sort of statistical models to try and understand what kinds of growth rates these populations have, and then how much fishing can occur on these animals to still leave enough of them there to have a really healthy population.
That's wonderful. Well, look, should we go to questions?
Sure.
Let's go to questions, I think, because
All right.
this has been fabulous, and all the questions I've got are probably going to be asked by people. So let me just bring these up here. Okay. Ooh. So, Greta, first question. This is from St Paul's Grade 2 class.
Yeah.
What is the biggest type of squid?
The biggest type. So the biggest type of squid, it would be a toss-up between that colossal squid or the giant squid, and it depends on what you mean by biggest. If you mean longest, it's probably the giant squid by the time it stretch out its tentacles. If you mean heaviest, then it probably is that colossal squid.
Yes. Here's, now this one is an anonymous question, which is totally fine. How many suckers do octopi have?
All different kinds of numbers, and actually it's one of the characteristics that a taxonomist might use to differentiate between different species. So sometimes species might be a little bit tricky to tell apart, and they'll often go to sucker counts on the arms to, well, this one has 48, therefore it must be this species, and this one has 200 suckers, so it might be another species.
So it just varies.
It varies.
From species to
it
species.
really varies a lot, but it's at least kind of 20ish and up to hundreds on each arm.
I think the coolest thing that I've learned is that they smell through the
I know.
suckers. That's
Weird. Imagine
amazing.
smelling through your hands.
I know.
That'd be kind of gross.
It would be horrible.
Yeah. Oh, I don't think I'd like that.
Me neither. What is the hardest part about being a scientist? The hardest part.
Well, there's lots of things I love about being a scientist. So I love going to work and doing all sorts of different things every day. And being a marine biologist means I can look at something in the ocean and go, I wonder why that is, and then go figure it out. So that's kind of cool.
That is cool.
There's lots of cool things. The hardest bit probably would be that, we deal with some complicated things. So, it's helpful if you want to be a scientist to be good at maths and good at computers and things like that. And I think it's a job where we've got to be pretty productive all the time. So we publish research articles and we've got to apply for our own funding. So when you become a scientist, nobody gives you a big magic pot of money that you get to go and buy all your cool equipment and things with. We've constantly got to apply for more funding, and so we write a lot of grant applications, and I think that would actually be the hardest thing, is writing all these grant applications, and you might get like 1 in 10. So the hardest thing about being a scientist is getting used to rejection. So we will often we'll draft really exciting projects and put them into the funder, and then we might not get the money. But you just get up and you do it again, and yeah.
And the reason for that is because there are so many other groups of scientists who are putting in for money as well.
Yeah,
all worthy projects.
There's limited funding.
Limited funds.
Yeah.
Here's another question, an anonymous question. How long has it been since the gloomy octopus was discovered?
2005 or 2006.
Oh, it's quite new then, isn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
So we started getting reports of the gloomy octopus through a project I run called RedMap, which is the Range Extension Database and Mapping Project. And people that are fishing and diving all around Tasmania or Australia actually can take a photo of something that they see that's unusual and they send it into the website. And we then get scientists to check that out.
That's sort of like citizen science.
It is a citizen science project, that's right.
So anyone could be involved.
Yeah, but when we got these photos of the gloomy octopus, we didn't know if they were new to Tasmania or if they were just new to us and no one had reported them before. So I got a PhD student called Jorge Ramos from Mexico. He came to Tasmania to study, and he did a PhD or a 3-year research project looking at the genetics of the gloomy octopus. And he was able to show through the genetic study that was actually a recent rapid range extension or movement into Tasmania.
That's great. Good question. Now here is one from someone who is homeschooled in Margate, Nadal. Does the octopus see in colour?
Ooh, I don't actually know.
Now, it'd be hard to tell, really, I guess.
Yeah,
Unless
I actually can't remember. I know they see different things to us, so what an octopus sees might not be quite exactly the same as what we see. I don't know.
We'll find
thing
out.
About being a scientist, actually, is we don't
you can
remember all the things. I'm sure somebody knows, but I don't know. We could find that out.
Good question. Burnie Primary School. Which octopus is the smallest?
There's also a little octopus called a pygmy octopus, and I think it's roughly the same size as the pygmy squid.
Oh, so it's tiny.
Yeah, about the size of like a thumbnail or something.
Oh, that's
like
really tiny.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
wow.
cute.
Imagine seeing
really
those.
Cute.
Oh,
yeah.
I'm going to keep going with these fabulous questions. Burnie Primary School again. Where in the ocean are there habitats?
Okay, so we use the word habitat to mean pretty much anything in the ocean. And so if we could say, if it's just a big long pile of sand, then that's a sandy habitat. If it's just the sort of murky depths of the ocean and it's just the water, the water, we would call that the water column habitat. Or we might have a coral reef habitat or a seagrass habitat or an algae habitat. It's literally just the word that we use to mean what that environment type looks like that animals prefer.
Here's another question from Nadal again in Margate. We talked about the squid's eye, but how big is the octopus's eye? I guess it depends on the size of the octopus.
It all depends on the size of the animal, but octopus also have very large eyes and very large brains for the size of their body. So if we were squid, Louise, our eyes would probably be about that big.
Right. Oh, compared with our current size.
Yes, our heads would be bigger as well.
Oh, just imagine you'd have
our
really, really big brains, wouldn't that be? That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, so it all depends on the size of the octopus. The biggest octopus, I think, is called the Pacific giant octopus, and they live around Alaska and around America. And I think they're around 30 or 40 kilos.
All right. Yeah.
Heavy.
Yeah. That's quite a few bags of potatoes.
Yeah, it's quite heavy.
It's quite heavy. Do you know, that was good that you just said that, Greta, because that was the question that had come from Treehouse Academy. What is the biggest octopus? Here is a question from Luke and Kate, who are homeschooled. Where do the giant squid lay their tiny eggs? Do they just float in the ocean or get laid on the deep sea floor?
Awesome question.
Good question.
So we know very little information about how giant squid reproduce. In fact, I think there's only been very occasionally they get caught on deep sea fishing gear, and I think there's only one mature squid with eggs that they've found, female squid, and I don't think they've seen many egg masses in the wild. So they have caught little babies that they've been able to use genetics to confirm it is baby giant squid. But they don't know how the eggs come out and what it kind of looks like. It's most likely produced in a big circular gelatinous mass with thousands and thousands of little eggs all stuck together in it, and that floats in the water column. That's how a lot of deep sea squid spawn. But we don't know.
No, because it's so deep down, it's hard to investigate, isn't it?
There's very little information known about most creatures that live in the deep ocean.
In the deep ocean. Now, we've got 5 more minutes, so we'll squeeze in a few more questions.
Okay, rapid fire.
Oh, rapid fire. Deloraine Primary School. Does the female giant squid eat or attack the smaller male squid?
Squids are cannibals.
Oh, I was going to ask you that. Are they?
Yep.
So they eat each other.
They will. I think they prefer to eat, fish and crabs and other things like that. So they only eat protein sources. So they only eat other animals. But if they can't find another fish or a crab or something like that, they will start looking at each other like, I think you look quite yummy. Yeah, so they will eat each other, yes.
Yeah, good question. East Derwent Primary. Grade 3 and 4, I think. How long does it take for an arm to grow back? Good question.
We don't know.
No.
Yeah.
Too hard to watch, I suppose.
Well, I think it would probably mean scientists would have to chop their arms off and watch how quickly they grow back, and we kind of don't want to do that.
Yeah, we don't want to do that, do we?
Yes. But probably pretty quickly because they only live for a short time.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now, Burnie Primary School, I just want to say kudos to you because you have got a lot of questions here, so I'm just trying to go to a couple of other schools, so apologies, Burnie Primary School. Deloraine Primary School. What is a predator of the giant or colossal squid? Good question.
Whales.
Sperm whale. Sperm whale.
Yes, so they often catch sperm whales with scars on them from the squids.
Oh,
yeah.
really?
If a giant squid is trying to defend itself from a sperm whale, each one of the suckers has got little toothed rings in it, and so you'll get these little ringed scars on the sperm whale.
I've seen that before.
Yes.
Is that what that is?
Yes. And if they get attacked by a colossal squid or a colossal squid's trying to fight back from a sperm whale, a colossal squid has hooks in their suckers and they'll have big scratchy marks up their body.
Oh my God, I wondered what those circles were. Right, we've got time for one more question. And there are so many questions here, Greta, so I'm sorry everyone if I missed out on reading your question. Lindisfarne North Primary School, Year 5 and 6. Where do you go diving to find these octopus and squid?
Anywhere. You could find them in any part of the ocean, but my favourite place is the east coast of Tasmania. So Frasernae, Coles Bay is where I've done most of my diving work. So the videos that I just showed with the southern calamari spawning, swimming around and laying eggs, that is in really shallow water in Hazards Bay, which is just off Coles Bay there.
And you were telling me just before we came on air that you've taken your children with you into the field.
That's right. My kids have always come out in the field with me, so they've been recording sort of different things as we catch them out of the ocean. They've fed animals in tanks with me. They've helped me sort of beach seine to catch fish to feed octopus and squids in tanks. And
that's great. You're training them up as
helpers.
research assistants.
Yep.
Well, look, everyone, that's all we have time for. We've got so many questions. We should have gone for another hour.
Yes,
but Greta,
very impressed with the questions.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
That's all
that was
right.
just absolutely fascinating.
Thank you very much for having me.
I think all the questions are testament to your presentation. Now, next week is Science Week, so this is a big week for you next week, Greta.
Absolutely.
But it's a big week here at UCTV Alive for Kids because we have got a program every day for you next week at 9 o'clock in the morning. So you can register to watch these programs either by visiting our Facebook page or having a look at the Underwood Centre website, there's a special section there for UCTV Alive for Kids. So hop on and register for those programs for next week. So that's every day next week for Science Week at 9 o'clock in the morning. And as I said, that's all we've got time for. So thanks so much for tuning in, everyone, and we'll see you next time.